I'm going to say something that might sting a little bit and have a little bit of an edge to it. Worry is just assuming that God is going to mess up. I know it's not exactly gentle, and I'm not here to shame anybody because honestly, like I do this too, but I think we need to hear what's actually being said underneath all of this anxiety because we've made worry become something that's so normal that we've almost stopped hearing it. When I worry, what I'm functionally saying is like, God, I don't trust you with this one. Worry acts like God forgot about you, like he's up there completely caught off guard going, oh no, I didn't see this one coming. I'm not sure how to handle this one. But here's a question I want to put in front of you. When has God ever failed you? Not when was it hard, not when did it hurt. Like those things are going to happen. But when did he fail? I want you to go back through your life. I want you to go to that season where you were certain that you would not make it through, but yet you're here. I want you to go to the night that you cried so hard that you thought that your heart would never recover, but it recovered. I want you to go through the thing that you were terrified about, the thing that crushed you 5 years ago and consumed months of your life, and yet you made it through. He carried you through every single one, not one exception. And yet here we are again, worrying. Let me describe to you what worry actually does. Worry builds imaginary tragedies. That's its whole job. It takes something that hasn't happened, might never happen, and it constructs it into a vivid detail in our minds. And then it makes you live inside of it, and you feel the emotions of a disaster that doesn't even exist. And your body responds to it, and it responds to an event that has never occurred. And then most of the time, the thing that you rehearsed in our heads over and over and over, it never happens. So you paid the full emotional price for a catastrophe that you were never built for. Worry makes you suffer through things that might never even happen. And notice what we worry about. It's often the same short list. We worry about our relationships, our money, and our future. And underneath all of those is this one question. Will my life turn out the way I hoped it would? That's the real question, isn't it? That's the question that's actually underneath all of these anxieties. But here's a part that I want you to really see. Worry doesn't just stay in one place. It's an expansionist. Here's what I mean by that. You solve one thing and then it just relocates. You fix the money problem, then it moves into a health problem. You fix the health problem, then it moves into a kid problem. And it's never actually about one thing. Because worry isn't really about our circumstances. It's about control. It's the mind desperately trying to secure a future that it has no authority over. It's running scenario after scenario, hoping that if it just thinks hard enough, that it can guarantee an outcome. And it can't. It never could. That is the exhausting part. You're doing all this work and nothing moves. Now let me get honest about something because I don't want this to be a guilt trip. Some of you have been told your whole life that worry is a sin, and that anxiety means that you have weak faith, and that if you just prayed harder, you'd be fine. And that message has done some real damage to people. It takes people who are already struggling and then it adds shame on top of it. So let me be clear about something. Faith is not pretending that you're never afraid. Faith is being afraid and saying, God, you're bigger than this. Those are completely different things. One of them is denial and the other one is trust. Those are completely different things. One of them is denial and the other one is trust. I mean, look at people all throughout scripture. David wrote entire psalms that are basically panic attacks, just with a little bit of music. He was saying things like, how long, O Lord? Why have you forgotten me? That's in the Bible. And then Elijah, right after the greatest victory of his life, he collapses under his tree and asks God to let him die. And then Jesus himself in the Garden of Gethsemane, he's in such anguish that Luke, who is a physician during that time, records that his sweat fell like drops of blood. And none of those are examples of people with weak faith. They're examples of honest people bringing real fear to a real God. So the goal is not a life with no fear. The goal is a faith that is bigger than your fear. And here's the distinction. Worry wants control. Trust surrenders control. That's the fork in the road. Worry is your mind's attempt to sit in a chair that was never yours. It's trying to be sovereign over tomorrow, running all the simulations, covering all the contingencies. It's holding a future that you were never given the authority to hold. And it is exhausting because you're doing a job that you were never equipped for. You are a finite creature trying to guarantee an infinite number of variables. So of course you're tired. You've been carrying the weight of the universe that you don't run. Trust is what happens when you finally set that down. Not because you stopped caring, but because you remembered who is actually in control. Here's the deepest thing that I want you to see today, because it reframes everything. You have never once had to face tomorrow today. Think about that literally right now. At this moment, you are not in tomorrow. You've never been in tomorrow. Nobody ever has. Every day you've ever lived, you have lived it today, with today's strength, today's grace, and today's resources. But you see, here's what worry does. Worry drags tomorrow into today. It makes you carry a weight that you weren't given the strength for, because the strength for tomorrow is given to you tomorrow. That's why worry feels crushing. It's because you're trying to lift a load that you're not equipped for yet. You're trying to use the strength that you haven't been given yet. God gives grace for today. Worry makes you carry tomorrow with today's strength, and that's why it feels impossible, because it is. But here's the other side of it. You're not walking into an empty tomorrow. You're not the advanced scout going into unknown territory alone. God is already there. He's not waiting to see how it goes. He's not going to be surprised by what happens tomorrow. He's already in the future that you're afraid of. He's outside of time, present in every moment at once, and he's fully aware of the thing that you are losing sleep over. You see, you're not carrying your future alone. God is already standing in tomorrow, and he's not worried about what he sees. That's the difference between anxiety and faith. Anxiety says, I had to figure out what's coming next. Faith says, no, someone I trust is already there. And you have evidence for this. Just look back on your life. Every hard season that you have survived is proof of this pattern. Proof that grace shows up when the day does. Not before. It never comes early. But it has never, not one time, ever come late. Now let me take you to what Jesus actually said about this. And it's in Matthew chapter 6. Jesus says, do not be anxious about your life. I'll take it into consideration. But listen, the Greek word there is Merimnaō. And it comes from a root word that means to divide and to be pulled apart. And that's literally what anxiety is. It is a divided mind. It's a soul being pulled in two directions at once. And then Jesus points at the birds. He says, look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns. He says, listen, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. He says, are you of not more value than they? Notice he doesn't say the birds don't work. The birds work constantly. He's just saying they don't worry. They're not lying awake at night worrying about when the winter's coming. And then the line that he says after this is, which of you by being anxious can add a single hour to his span of life? Worry has never added a single thing. Not 1 hour, not one solution, not $1. It only subtracts. And then Jesus lands a plane in verse 34 where he says, therefore, do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious about itself. Today's trouble is enough for today. And honestly, that's the manna principle. If you remember in Exodus, God fed Israel in the wilderness with bread that appeared each morning. And he told them, gather enough for today. And anyone who hoarded extra found it rotted overnight. Why? You see, he was training a whole nation over 40 years with this one lesson. It's this: I will be here tomorrow too. He's saying you don't have to stockpile all of these things. God gave Israel bread one day at a time for a purpose. Not because he couldn't give more, but because he wanted them to need him tomorrow, to depend on him. And he's still doing the exact same thing with us. Now here's an interesting fact. Did you know that the most repeated command, notice it's not a suggestion, it's a command. The most repeated command in the entire Bible is some version of do not be afraid. Some counts even put it to around 365 times. Coincidence? I think not. That is one for every day of the year, meaning that is a daily thing that we have to do. So I want you to ask yourself, why would God say that so many times? Not because we shouldn't ever feel fear. He knows that we will. I mean, he made us. He knows exactly what we are. He said it that often because he knows that we need to be reminded of it that often. It's not a rebuke, it's a reassurance, repeated daily by a father who knows his kids. And notice, this is so interesting. Almost every time that phrase appears, it comes attached with a reason. Because he's not just saying, don't be afraid. He has it attached to a reason. For example, it says, fear not, for I am with you. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. It's never just calm down. It's always calm down because of me, because I'm with you. I'm for you, not against you. And then Peter gives us a kind of a practical mechanism where he says, cast all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. And it's actually very interesting. That word cast is, I believe it's eperipito. And that is a very violent physical word. It's a word for like throwing a cloak onto a donkey's back. And this is not something where it's like a gentle placing. It's actually like hurling something off of yourself and onto something, listen to this, onto something that can actually carry it. Worry says, God, I don't trust you with this. Prayer says, God, I can't carry this. One of those is faithlessness. The other one is worship. And here's something beautiful that Paul writes in Philippians chapter 4. He says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God." You see, Paul doesn't say just stop feeling it. He says transfer it. You see, worry and prayer are actually aimed at the exact same problem. It's just one of them holds it and the other one hands it over. So, how do we do this practically? First, write down your receipts. And no, I'm not talking about a grocery list. I'm talking about the seasons that you've been through that you have overcome. Like literally, make a list of the hardest seasons of your life, the ones where you for sure didn't think you were going to make it through. Then I want you to write down what actually happened. And what you're going to notice is you're going to find a pattern of faithfulness that you probably had forgotten because we are forgetful creatures. So I want you to keep that list somewhere where you can find that list fast, because worry has this sort of like amnesia to it by design. When the worry tells you like, oh, this time you're not going to make it, you need evidence in your own handwriting that says otherwise. Second thing they're going to do is they're going to convert worry into prayer and worship in the moment. I want you to make this a rule. Every time you catch yourself rehearsing a disaster, worrying about something, I want you to say it out loud to God instead of just silently saying it to yourself and letting it ruminate in your mind. You see, worry is prayer aimed at nobody. I actually once heard that it says that worry is actually worshiping the devil. But what prayer is, it's actually pointing at someone and really the only one who can hold it. And then third, I want you to ask these two questions. First question, is this actually happening right now? Or am I just in a possible future? And the second question, is any of this in my control? You see, because most worry dies under those two questions. If it's not happening yet and you can't control it, then you're not being responsible and you're just suffering in advance. But if there is an action you can take that action and then release the rest. And fourth, this is the one that I struggle with the most and that I need to work on as well, but it's live in day-sized pieces. Here's what I mean by that. It's actually very similar to the manna practice that we had talked about earlier. When the whole future feels crushing, when you're overwhelmed by this imagined future, shrink it down and ask this question: what does faithfulness look like today? What does faithfulness look like for the next 24 hours? That's it. That is your assignment. You are never asked to carry more than one day at a time, and you've been handed exactly enough grace for exactly that much. Now I want to leave you with this. I want you to think about the thing that's been keeping you up. Now think back 5 years, 10 years, whatever you were terrified of then, the thing that owned all of your nights. It felt so heavy that you couldn't even imagine getting past it. Now for some of you, you may not even be able to remember what it was. But for some of you, you remember it vividly. But look at where you are now. And you see, in each and one of those things, you were carried through it. It happened so quietly that you barely even noticed. It always does. He has never failed you. Not once. Not in the season you didn't think you'd survive. Not the season you didn't think you'd be able to get through. Not in the night you cried yourself to sleep. Not one time in your whole life has he ever gotten it wrong. So maybe the thing that you're holding right now isn't as unprecedented as it seems. You are not walking into tomorrow alone. You are walking into a day where he already is, and he's not nervous about what he sees. Worry is just assuming that God is going to mess up. But look back on your own life. He never has. Not once. And he's not going to start now. So set it down and take it one day at a time, because that's all that you were ever asked to carry. Keep the faith.
Push it to the limit, I can't go no more. Red light, no way, I'm coming back home. Long dirt road, all on my own. I'ma be the greatest, write my name in the stone. Write my name in the stone. Yeah, I'm coming back home.